if Drake, co-signs an up and coming artist, Drake's fans have trust that Drake knows what's going on and Drake knows what's cool. So I can't think of anything more powerful than another artist supporting an artist, and that's just the kind of idea behind it. I just want to show, the independent community another example of what they could create.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by Intrapreneur.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. I am your host, Corrin Campbell. With me is my co-host, Jack McCarthy, and we also have a very special guest today. He's probably one of my favorite people in the music industry chatter space. So I'm super stoked. Jack, why don't you introduce our guest to everyone?
Yeah, what's up, everybody? I'm super excited to introduce you guys and gals to Dame Ritter. Some of you may not know Dame. Some of you may know Dame from the Music Entrepreneur Club, but we're super excited to have him on the podcast to talk about a really cool project that he has been in the process of working on and actually just wrapped up towards the end of last week. So Dame, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me. I started listening to your podcast probably, 4 or 5 years ago. That's what, encouraged me to reach out when I heard the podcast and I was just listening, because when you're in the industry for a while, when you hear people talk, you can go, okay, these people get it. So when I heard your podcast, I was like, yes, this team gets it. And that's why I reached out, and that's why I've continued to work with you guys to this day. So, unfortunately, it's taken so long to get on the podcast. I guess I had to earn a couple more stripes, but I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's funny because we've been meaning to have you on for so long, and it just never lined up properly. Because we have arcs and whatever, but there's so many things that you could have talked about before. And so I'm stoked because I feel like 1 week notice, which is, what we're going to talk about today, kind of has a lot of different pieces to it that bring together a bunch of things that we would have talked to you about. Mm-hmm. So can you just give everybody kind of a rundown, just an overview of what it is, how you came up with the idea, and then how it kind of happened?
Sure. So 1 week notice is a project that I first did in 2018, but essentially we fly 6 or 7 artists to a city, put them in a house, and they're tasked with recording an album in a week. So I did this first in 2018 in Austin, Texas, flew out, I think 7 artists and a couple producers, created a project in a week. That was a cool experience. The project was amazing. It didn't quite get the push that I wanted it to get, and we didn't quite capture all of the content to fully let people inside and show people what we were doing. But based off that experience, I was able to just kind of tighten things up and make sure this time around we had so much more content and things ran a lot smoother. So this time we did it in LA. We just wrapped up this past Saturday. So we flew 6 artists. We stayed in the Hollywood Hills, rented a nice house, and they created an amazing album in a week. And I plan to continue this, even though it's taken me 3 years to do the second one. Going forward, it will be at least an annual thing going forward.
So cool. Man, and also that gives, I'm assuming that these artists, some of them, this is a pretty unique experience for them where this they wouldn't be renting a house in the Hollywood Hills and doing the whole thing. So can you talk a little bit about how you identified the people to be involved in this and kind of what you were looking for when you started selecting people?
Yeah, I think the process was similar to when I used to run an independent hip hop label, and when I used to select artists to reach out to potentially sign. I just follow them for a long time and see how they move. Obviously, got to be a fan of their music, but how are they using social media? How consistent are they? How good is their presence on camera? Try to get a sense of how they're engaging with their community, because a lot of the success of this project will be based on everybody just sharing it on each other's platforms, the cross promotion. Are you willing to work and tag other artists, when you post on social media? So all of those things factor in, and it's a really long process. I was trying to put this together before the pandemic, and the mix of artists, I just didn't feel, sometimes, well, a lot of times in the music industry, there's just a gut feeling, based off your experience, in terms of how artists will gel, how they will work together. And I just didn't feel like I had the right mix. And then the pandemic hit, so it had to get pushed back. But eventually I found, 6 artists that I felt could really gel well together. And I got lucky and it worked out. And like I said, everything was amazing. The music was amazing. I'm sure the relationships that they forged in the house will continue even after the project is promoted. It was just a lot of genuine positive energy in the house. So I'm glad it worked out.
That's dope.
Absolutely.
I'm eager to hear more about what went down in the house, because you and I just kind of touched on that a little bit last week. But before we get into that, you and I have had, we get together every week and we get to just rap about what's going on the stuff that we're working on together. And then I've just been fortunate enough to kind of get the secondhand info from you as you've been planning this and getting it all together. And the vibe has been good, pretty much from the get with this iteration of 1 week notice. And I know, when we were talking about it, you were like, oh man, I'm really excited. Like the vibe is good. I'm not getting any red flags. Just, in terms of planning a project like this, I imagine the scope is immense. I'm curious, and I imagine our listeners would be curious to know too, what was the planning process like setting up something as big and as bold as this, flying artists out to one location, outfitting a studio in it, all of that. I'd be curious to know a little bit about what that process was like logistically, and kind of being at the helm of it.
Yeah. So, I think the key is starting early, and just having a lot of conversations, whether it's with artists that you think are going to be on the project, whether it was other people that might be supporting the project, whether it's videographers or engineers. There's probably 25 plus people that played some type of role in 1 week notice. So all that communication needs to start early. And then with brands and sponsors, because we had some really cool sponsors come on board. We had Facebook's Bars app came and supported the project. Mackie pretty much donated a ton of gear that we had in the house, because we set up home studios inside the house so that we didn't have to leave. And then we had Revolt come in. They're going to be premiering the documentary that we're putting together. And then the distribution company that I work with, Foundation Media, they were super supportive. And then LRG laced the team up with a bunch of clothes. So I think that, some of these brands I had relationships with prior, but some were just excited about the narrative and they thought it was something cool. And once you start getting people on board and you tell brands hey, these people are on board and Revolt's on board, it starts to get a little bit easier once you get a little bit of traction or you get that first bite. So I would say start as soon as you can. The communication is crucial. The way you present the idea to a brand. I had a deck. It just kind of outlined what we were doing, what I thought the brand could get out of it, and really just, pitched it to them, and they were excited about the idea. So it all came together. But you're right. It's a ton of stuff. Just logistically, I don't have an assistant anymore. So all of the admin stuff kind of fell on my shoulders. I got a Excel spreadsheet with the budget and contact info and everything.
Wow.
On my computer. So my consulting days came to play and just kind of that organization. So it worked out.
That's awesome. That's really
Yeah. I just think it's incredible. I come from a military background, and so instantly my brain goes to logistics. And it sounds like you were really just carrying all of this, and especially when you're talking about sponsorship coordination, lots of events will have a sponsorship person managing sponsorships. It also sounds like you're doing a documentary on this. So you've got those third party. Were they capturing everything in the house, and how were you keeping a handle on everyone being where they should be and no one being where they shouldn't?
No, I think the key is just having great people on the project. I hired a really good friend of mine, Idil, who was the director of the documentary, and she's directed other documentaries and movies before. So I knew that putting it in her hands, the documentary would come out good. Obviously, I haven't seen it yet. It's not edited. But I think that's just the key for any successful project is hiring the right people, getting the right people involved, and then just giving them, the responsibility. Because I can't, in a project like this, I can't micromanage. I have to just know that you're going to get the job done. And I have that confidence and I have that trust in the people around me. So I'm just surrounded by a lot of dope people, and I'm fortunate that that's the case.
So that totally makes sense. Like, and man, from just with all the moving parts of this, like hearing it from you now and hearing it from you as it was going on, like putting that trust in your team and also the artists that you were working with on it, it sounds like like a big leap of faith for sure. Something I'm curious about was, like, you mentioned the narrative of 1 week notice and how it's so much about collaboration. I'm just curious, from your perspective, when this idea first came to light in 2018, when you first, had the first version of 1 week notice, and now why we talk a lot about artist collaboration on the podcast and, with our community, and I know you do as well. What kind of caught your attention about collaboration, and why was that such an important piece of why you wanted to do this in the first place?
Yeah, well, I feel like, obviously there's artists that collaborate in the independent community, but I don't think it happens enough. When we share resources, when we share contacts, obviously with people that you build good relationships with, or you share fan bases. I can't think of anything more powerful than another artist sharing your work. Right, because an artist has built up trust with their community. That's a very big cosign. So, that's something that really can't be paid for. Obviously, you can run Facebook ads and things like that, but then you're just dependent upon, somebody seeing the ad, being interested in it. But if Drake, cosigns an up and coming artist, Drake's fans have trust that Drake knows what's going on and Drake knows what's cool. So I can't think of anything more powerful than another artist supporting an artist. And that's just the kind of idea behind it. I just want to show, the independent community another example of what they could create. Obviously don't want you to call it 1 week notice, but I want I want other people to do projects like this. And I have a lot more ideas of other iterations of 1 week notice to keep it fun, to keep it creative going forward. But that's essentially what, I mean, it's simple, but I don't think it happens enough. I think sometimes it's ego. Sometimes it's, artists are a little reserved and they're not sure how another artist will respond if they reach out and try to build a relationship. So things get a little weird in the music industry, and that prevents a lot of collaboration and just, cool things that could happen. But yeah, like I said, it's sometimes a lot of weird energy in the music industry.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That know, like, and trust factor, it sounds like that's kind of like what you were trying to spread. It's so interesting. And Corrin and I have talked about this on the podcast before. Like, I think like healthy competition is something that drives people forward and certainly drives businesses forward. But I think artists, you're not really competing for, another artist's fans' attention. You're competing for attention from, other things, their bills, their mortgage, their kids, their school, their work, whatever it is. Any business or any artist really is kind of competing for like 5th or 6th place. So you're not really up against a bunch of other artists. So why not work together? That's kind of always what stands out in my mind. Like, all of my best work as a writer and as a producer has always been when I'm working with other people, and I'm primarily like a solo artist now. So yeah, that totally resonates with me. I think I was even saying to you a couple of weeks ago, like, it's always been one of my, like, little kid dreams to like lock myself in a house that isn't mine and make a record in it. So when you started telling me that this was coming back, I was like, oh man, like, that's just the coolest thing ever. But I do think that that's such an important thing for artists, especially now as we go into, like, the continued internet era, collaboration is so powerful,
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's super powerful. And again, it's just not like a mind-blowing concept, but putting it together is another thing, making sure that everybody is comfortable and the communication is on point. Because these artists, in the first project, the artists, those artists always worked with each other anyway. So they were able to hit the ground running because they kind of worked the same way. With this group of artists, they didn't even really know each other. So, we started hopping on Zoom, maybe 2 months before, and then every other week, just having conversations. And I would give them updates on, brand sponsors or just ideas that I had to promote the project or to push the project. So I just wanted to open up that line of communication so they can start getting familiar with each other so that they could, we didn't waste any days as soon as we got to LA. So
Right. Had to set them up to hit the ground running.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that I noticed too, and in our community as well as just in the industry in general is, and it might be, especially if you've been, assertively independent for most of your own career, just this, I don't know, this aversion to working with others, like unless it's somebody that's like featuring on your song, but like other than that, and to me it's interesting because it's like we feel competitive and feel like we can't work together to get forward because then that person might replace us, and it's like, we're not trying to get people to buy a car.
Right.
People
Right.
are only going to buy like 1 or 2 cars, like in a healthy household. I mean, some people have no car, and would love to have one. So I think, we have to kind of get out of that mindset. And that's something that even at Intrapreneur, the company was Circa, and then it was me and Circa, and then it was me, Circa, and Jack. And now we have over 10 employees under Intrapreneur, which for us is big. That's a lot of people for us.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting to see, we were just even talking at a partner meeting earlier today where it's like, gosh, all of these different pieces of what we're trying to do, like the mission in general, has just expanded and become something that could never have happened if it were just the 3 of us still,
Yeah.
and so that's something that I hope, our listeners can kind of take away if they haven't already considered, like, how can I develop a buddy in this journey, and whether that's a collaboration on a track, whether it's, songwriting, whether it's even design stuff. We have some indies in the community who are like, okay, I am really good at messenger marketing, but I'm terrible at running ads. And somebody else is like, I love running ads, but I am terrible at putting together messenger flows. And so they'll work together and, and trade and teach each other, I actually am interested to hear kind of about that because, you're kind of grouping some artists together somewhat genre wise, right? Like they might make music that's complementary to each other, although not identical. So where, did you see any of those differences come out? And was it something where they had to kind of learn something that made them uncomfortable? Or did you feel like the differences between them actually kind of helped make this something entirely different from what you were expecting?
Yeah, well, I mean, all the artists obviously make hip hop music, but they all have their own style. They have their own way that they like to create. That's something that we learned in the house. Like some artists create early in the morning, some in the evening. So we kind of had to balance that. I think everybody did a really good job at just kind of stepping out of their normal comfort zone and just for the good of the group, getting things done. The competition is still there. It's just friendly competition. So if somebody somebody records a verse and sends it to the group chat and it's a fire verse and everybody hears that, it's like, okay, if I get on this song, I'm gonna have to bring my A game, so hopefully it brings the best out of everybody because you got some really talented people in the room doing some amazing things. So you have to bring your A game or you're going to sound pretty silly on the song. So
Right.
the competition is still there, but it's in a healthy way and it's pushing everybody creatively, to do their best work.
Absolutely. So what do you have? I mean, obviously this is a, a musical project that's wrapped, but like there's all of these things coming after it. So, and you said there's a documentary involved. Obviously you had sponsors involved during, but they're probably also, I'm sure that relationship extends beyond when all those artists flew home.
Mhm.
So how are you looking at promoting this and bringing awareness to it? And how long is that process, do you think?
Yeah, so it'll probably be a couple months. We're trying to figure out exactly when all of the different content pieces are coming out. I think first we have these daily recap videos that just kind of show, they're just quick, like 60-second videos of each day, so that content will probably get dripped out fairly soon. And then the artist also did like an individual freestyle video or like a one take style video. It's like a 1 to 2 minute thing, so we can continue to kind of keep people's attention and keep the 1 week notice brand out there while we're editing and mixing and mastering the music and editing the final documentary. So we'll have those freestyle videos that will drip out as well. And then we did a cipher, and we divided the group into into two separate groups, 3 artists in each. So we have those 2 videos that need to come out. Then we shot a music video. So we have stuff to come out before, so while we're waiting on everything to get edited. And then Revolt wants to premiere the documentary on their YouTube channel initially, and probably on their actual TV channel later in the year. But when it comes out on YouTube, it'll come out in consecutive weeks. It's a 40-minute documentary, but it'll be cut in 5 8-minute segments. So it'll come out weekly. And then once those start coming out, a new song will drop with the episode every week. So we'll have five episodes, we'll drop a song a week. And then after that, the whole album will come out. And then we're going to plan a bunch of other stuff, but we're also planning a virtual release party. I've been having people come on the Music Entrepreneur Club to talk about NFTs and the crypto space. And obviously it's educating our community about it, but it's really been educating me as well. And I've been trying to build relationships in the space to really understand, like, how can we have a successful NFT drop, and how can we make it cool? Not about making the most money, but just contributing to the narrative and help get 1 week notice out there further to different communities. So we're definitely planning an NFT drop. We're going to have a virtual release party and crypto voxels, and it should be interesting. It's not something that was available or even existed when my label existed. So,
Right.
something new, but we have some people that are helping us, kind of coaching us through the process, so that we do it the right way. And it doesn't flop. So hopefully that comes together solid as well.
Man,
we can't all be Paris Hilton and put our first NFT out and have it be $1 million.
Right.
That's not going to happen to most people.
Right.
So.
That's like a huge content strategy as far as how the release is going to roll out. When in the process did that start coming together for you? Like, were you masterminding that on your own? Were you working with, your team? Were you working with the artist to come up with that? Did that happen, during the week last week, or was that, all kind of fleshed out in your mind? I'm sure, like, it's one thing to get a whole bunch of people in a room and write together and record together. It's a whole nother thing to plan out a whole strategy of what happens after, and you've got the whole thing kind of in your back pocket.
It makes me think of Dame's like history as with a label, right? Because as you were talking about it, I was like, dude, because we've got our training, the ultimate album launch, which is this whole strategy piece, and it's like all of this content and the gathering happening along the way. Yeah. And then this presentation of the content and the drip, like, strategy behind these different segments, and then like a song per, and then the album, and then this, and the virtual, like, to me, it made me think immediately of your experience with, doing label releases when you were working in that space. So I'd be interested to know, obviously some of it is changed, right? You didn't have NFTs when you were doing the label work. So you're bringing in new strategies, but then how much of the actual components of it are that different from what you've done before?
It's pretty similar. I mean, this project, again, it's, we're not going to have a huge marketing budget. We're we're really depending on existing relationships. Being in the music industry for quite some time, I've been fortunate to have a lot of people support. So, and I don't call in that many favors, but when 1 week notice comes around, I definitely put it on a lot of people's radar. And I think it's something that they'll want to support because it's dope. So as long as the content is dope, I have, I have some pretty cool people in pretty influential spaces. So I don't have to spend, you don't have to have a publicist for this one. And we'll probably run some ads, but I don't think that the budget doesn't have to be that big for this one to, because we have our collective platforms, our collective resources and relationships. And if we kind of mobilize that, I think that that's going to go much further than any budget, we can put together.
Yeah. So touching on what Jack was asking, because he was saying like, how long were you planning this? I'm also, in addition to that question, like, so do you think it was shortened by the fact that you have all this previous label experience, right? And how much do you think it changed along the way? Like, was there stuff happening in the house where you're like, oh, like I have this whole plan I've been working on this time, but you saw something and were inspired to pivot or change or add something? How long do you think this whole process is taking from start to even now you're still building stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always open to new ideas, and since we haven't really started putting like the main content out, like, I'm sure new things will come up. During the house, nothing really happened that kind of changed our plan. So we're kind of, we're doing what we thought we would do at this time. But I continue to have conversations, and in terms of like how long it will last, hopefully a long time. I mean, if people really start to like the project, then we'll extend the window that we promote. If a song pops that we didn't know was going to pop, and, it didn't already have a music video, then all right, let's get together. Let's do a music video. Let's continue to milk it for as long as we can.
Yeah.
Because for me, again, I'm trying to make this bigger and better every time. So if this gets on a lot of people's radar, who knows what conversations I can have for the next one. And get the budget bigger, get the platform bigger, and it'll just create a much better platform to get more indie artists some shine.
Yeah. Lean in. Take note, like pay attention. I think that's something that, sometimes we as indie artists forget because we're doing so many things. But like once you get it all set up and you're like, okay, launch. And like then I think we enter this space where we're thinking like, okay, I'm gonna watch it, and see what happens. And it's like, well, part of watching, the point of that is so that you can extend the life or reach of what you're doing. And like when you see something that works, like lean into it. And I really think that that's cool how you're already preparing to think like that, because I think some people forget to do that. They're like, all right, I got here, I'm done. I'm going to press go, and whatever happens, if it happens,
I'm sure most of the work will be kind of rallying the team and just reminding them, to post, getting their ideas, providing them with the assets to post, just to make sure that all of our efforts are coordinated so we can, pack the biggest punch into our launch. I feel like that was a big part of why my label was successful, because, obviously Hobson had a platform, but eventually Funk Volume had a platform. My brother had a platform. Jaron had a platform. Everybody had a platform. So, if we had to get a message out, we're shooting it out from probably 15 different platforms as opposed to one. And if we can coordinate that to all happen at the same time, that's pretty much how we got, Hobson was on a XXL cover as a freshman, and then we got Dizzy Wright on the XXL cover, and then Jaron Benton on the XXL cover. Those were all fan votes because because there's really no individual artist that could compete with our machine and like our organization, our coordination. So if somebody's trying to get votes and all they have is just their individual Facebook page, their individual Twitter, and then we have like 20 different platforms, it's going to be hard to compete with that coordination. So I'm trying to do the same thing with 1 week notice.
Yeah, that's so cool. So were your artists posting, because I follow you on Instagram, and I saw all the Mackie gear in the back of that, back of that vehicle, and like, so I saw all of that. I don't follow the artists that were in there. So did you gate some of the content and still have them posting about it each day to bring awareness, or are you kind of did you have them save it all for when you're going to be releasing it, later on?
But I encourage them to share as much as possible. Every artist is different with how they use social media, and I want to respect that. But at the same time, I've communicated to them like, hey, there's a lot of people that are invested in what we're doing, and we have to over deliver for these brands so that we can continue to build with them in the future.
Yeah.
So, if a brand says, if we've committed to, let's just say 5 posts and tag them, 5 times, I'm trying to tag them 10, I'm trying 12, 15. I'm trying to over deliver so that they see that we appreciate their support and we want to continue to build. So every day we had a check-in at 11 a.m. and that was like the theme of the week. I was telling, like, we have to over deliver in every way, shape, or form, for the sponsors, for the fans, for yourselves, for each other. That's how you become successful in this industry, and even outside of this industry, is just try to exceed expectations. There's a lot of people in the music industry that don't even do what they say they're going to do.
Right.
But we can stand out by over delivering on what we say we're going to do. And I think that's how, one of the ways in which you can ensure that you'll have a long career in this industry.
For sure. Yeah. Speaking of the day to day, you mentioned you guys had a meeting every day at 11. I'm curious, what was the day to day like, as far as, I know you mentioned like some people work in the morning, some people like to work in the evenings, but what was the day to day and the process like, as far as actually making the record and writing these songs, getting 6 people who, really never met each other and had just started getting to know each other over Zoom leading up to this. What was that, from a production, songwriting, artistic process? I'm really curious to hear how it went. What was it like? Give me some war stories.
Yeah, no, I don't know if they're war stories, but essentially we had 3 like home studio setups. There was one in a bedroom right next to the pool. So that was like a real cool looking setup and kind of a really cool vibe. And then upstairs, there was like an office that had a sliding door that was perfect for another setup. And then he set up in the laundry room. He liked to just have his own space to record and to be able to feel free to explore different sounds with his voices and things like that. So he kind of would shut himself off and do his own thing. But then when you hear the verse and when you hear how it tapped into how it flowed with everybody else's verses, it was amazing. He's super talented. Khan is a machine. He creates super fast and is amazing. But that's how it works. So there were these setups, and people would just rotate, throughout the day and overnight, and they just made it work.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that's so cool, man. 3 recording studios setups, 1 house, people rotating all throughout. How many songs are going to be on the record?
I think we've narrowed it down to 12 or 13, but I know they started over 20.
That's wild.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so they were going in. I think they were just feeding off each other's energy, and just super inspired by one another. And yeah, the first day, I think it was, so Saturday, when they got there Saturday, I didn't expect too much to get done. I wanted people to settle in. But then I think Sunday we had some stuff planned. So we had like a photo shoot planned, and we wanted to start shooting those individual freestyle videos. And then after that, I wanted them to start, recording, because we had to get this done. I think that was the same night as the Logan Paul fight or something like that. I think the Logan Paul fight, but I assume, people after they watched that, they would tap in and start working. And then I left because I was seeing my stepdaughter off to prom. And then I get a call and it said, "Oh, Dame, like half the artists left the house." So I was like, oh man, starting off.
Oh no.
I was like, oh man, it's starting already. This is kind of falling apart. People not understanding kind of what the expectations were. Maybe it was my fault. So, for our next day, 11 a.m. check-in, I'm preparing this speech of like, I don't really want to be that guy. I don't want to like be super heavy-handed and be like, man, there's a lot of people invested in this, a lot of people depending on you guys to execute. But before I got to the house, I learned that people came back even later and started working on music. So a lot of stuff did get done that Sunday night, early Monday morning. And thankfully I didn't really have to have the speech that I was preparing pretty much overnight.
Right.
I was,
Look, y'all, you're here to work.
yeah.
You didn't have to be granddad after.
They knew.
Yeah, you just don't want to be that guy. You want to keep the energy positive. Hopefully everybody's on the same page because we've been having meetings. What we're here to do. How many people are working on this project. Obviously, the artists are making the music, but there's so many people involved and working really hard. So we got to play our role. But yeah,
Right.
everything went smooth after that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was great.
Man, that's so cool. So I'm curious, like, I imagine there's plenty of people, like even like myself, that hear a story like this and they're like, man, it would be so cool to do something like that. And I know you said like, yeah, I would love for people to do this, and obviously don't call it 1 week notice. But for an artist that is maybe thinking like, oh, I'd love to dip my toes into collaboration, whether it be one song or a record or whatever. What would you recommend? What kind of guidelines or advice might you give to somebody who's kind of starting to just kind of get into that frame of thinking? Maybe they're breaking out of like sheltered kind of egotism artistry for the first time. What would you recommend as far as like, starting out with something like this, even if they wanted to take after your model, just, step by step?
Yeah, I would just, identify the players that you think you would want to be part of the project. And then when you reach out to them, just try to articulate what you think the value is of coming together. It's a 2 + 2 = 6 situation. There's so much synergy when people come together in different ways. And again, it's not just collaborating on the music. It's not just sharing each other's fan base. There's, hopefully you get to a point where you're comfortable, sharing maybe some resources or relationships, sharing your knowledge about how you're doing certain things. And everybody came into the house with, different levels of like TikTok followers. Some people were stronger on TikTok. Some people were stronger on Instagram. I heard conversations about that just in terms of like how people were getting traction on TikTok. There was actually a guy named Schwan that I brought to the house, and he was available because he knows, and I think Corrin, you might know Schwan.
Yeah, Clubhouse pal.
Yeah. You introduced us to Schwan not too long ago.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, everything is just because I've been inspired just by what they're doing. Him and Jack B, obviously killing it on TikTok. He's a TikTok expert, so wanted him to be there so that artists could pick his brain if they wanted to. So hopefully it was an educational experience through the week as well. In addition to obviously making great music and hopefully growing everybody's fan base.
Absolutely. So cool. So if our people want to check out, what you've done, did you know if anyone's posted like IG reels that people can go back and check out? Or if not, where can they watch for future stuff so they can see all the stuff that you are talking about releasing?
Yeah, so the 1 week notice Instagram is where I post a lot of stuff. It's the number 1 and then week notice. No weird spelling, just WEEK notice. We don't really have a TikTok presence yet, but I would start there and then just kind of see the artists that are involved because they've shared a lot of content as well. But we'll start dropping the official content that we've created, the daily recaps, the freestyles, the ciphers, the actual music. And then when the documentary drops, I would encourage everybody to check out the documentary because obviously it shows how we put this together, who's involved. and how the days went. So the documentary should be real cool, and that will premiere on Revolt YouTube channel, I believe mid-July.
Okay.
I'm
But
super hyped about checking that out for sure.
Yeah, same.
yeah, so am I. So am I. I mean, because it's only 40 minutes and we got so much footage. So the team is tasked with, trying to narrow it down to a 40-minute doc. Um,
Yeah.
I'll be helping with it, but it's going to be a challenge. But it's great that we have so much other footage, because we'll be able to release that just to kind of continue to, have
Yeah.
conversation and keep the presence out there.
Tons of B-roll.
Mhm.
I think that that's something too, like when, our people are thinking about a release strategy, it's like, and I've said this on a podcast before, we've talked about our ultimate album launch, like I said earlier, and it's like, look, this is something that lives like forever, and so you can use it working up to your release and then release it. But then once the release happens and you're like, okay, well, that's kind of whatever, it's done, it's run its course, and now we're on to the next thing. There's still tons of people that have never seen that content, or if you have B-roll from it, like you should be capturing stuff as you're doing it all the time, because this is all stuff that you can use in the future and that new people will have never seen, so I think it's great that you've got that much content. Content is king, right? It's going to be so cool to see how it filters out and how much of it you're going to be able to use that isn't in the documentary for all this other stuff.
So I told them, as we're going through the footage, we're separating the content in different buckets. Obviously, the stuff that we know we're going to use for the doc, stuff that we're not going to use for the doc, but is actually pretty cool that we do want to share in some way, shape, or form. And then the third bucket is any good shots of the brands, any of the good shots of the Mackie gear that we're not using in the doc. Because I just want to continue to have more ideas for the brands, going back to the theme of over delivering. So the Bars app is essentially like a social media network for rappers. You can go on the bar, it's a Facebook owned app. You can go on there, you can rap, record yourself rapping, you can rap with others. So when we drop,
wow, I don't know anything about that.
so
News to me.
yeah.
Let's share. Tell me a little bit more. I mean, I know you're going on a path, but I need to know more about this because I'm clueless.
That's one of our primary sponsors, and just a random idea that I had about a week ago, because we're going to be dropping our own cipher, right? So it's 2 videos, 3 artists in each cipher, but we use the same beat for each video. But so when we drop the cipher videos, we're also going to put the same beat on the Bars app, so that if you think you can do a better job than the 1 Week Notice artists, you can.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's so cool.
Do your thing on the Bars app. But that was just, we're just coming up with different ideas to, engage people, and to get the brand out there, and the music out there when it starts dropping.
I gotta say, like, I think whether you're taking on a collaborative project like this or just going in and making a record, for yourself or your band or whatever, like there's so many lessons learned to take from the structure and the organization of everything you're talking about here, kind of piggybacking off what Corrin said, like from the content creation portion to the strategic planning to actually having a rollout, mapped out and what it's going to look like, and, what sales offers are going to be made. I think that that's such a critical point, because a lot of artists, they go into the studio and then it's like, okay, now we're going to figure out how to release the thing, as opposed to like, intentionally going into a project knowing like we need to map out a release really before, what the release is going to look like before we even get in and start making the thing. I just think that's a massive like lesson for people to take to heart.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, you should definitely have a plan for how you release an album or your music, but even bigger than that, like you should have an idea for how your album fits into everything else you're doing throughout the year. Like your album, a lot of artists, they, even if they do have a plan, they might put all of their efforts thinking that something crazy is going to happen as soon as this album drops. Like as soon as this album, like I'm not planning for after the album, because as soon as the album drops, Like I'm about to be able to go on tour. I'm about to be in magazines and things like that. And sometimes, a lot of times when you're done promoting your album, like those things didn't really happen that you thought were going to happen. So now you're going back to the drawing board and be like, okay, what's next? Well, I feel like you should already know what's next. Like you should put out your album, and then, some people are going into touring. Some people are launching contests. Like I feel like you should have a whole year planned out. You should know how your album fits into your year or the next 2 years. And you should know how, you're going to release the album and what the rollout's going to look like.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
spot on, man. I mean, I know that that's something that you and I have talked about plenty, working on projects with artists together. At IndieX has been a lot in that same kind of vein, and even commiserating with each other about it, being like, oh man, like nobody's thinking about the future here. We need to think about, how does this push the whole ecosystem forward? That's so important.
Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely. Well, I am super excited to see all that stuff. Obviously, you're also working on Music Entrepreneur Club because, you're not busy. So
No,
why not?
Not a busy guy.
Yeah, just keep stacking it on. But I definitely want to, touch on that and give, MEC a shout out because you have great information. I know you just said that you've already had people on there talking about NFTs and doing drops in that space. So would you mind sharing that with our listeners as well so they can go check out? You just have amazing resources. I think everyone should go look at.
Yeah, so the Music Entrepreneur Club is a free live music business education platform. We're sponsored by BeatStars, so all of our sessions are on the BeatStars platforms, primarily Twitch, but I think they broadcast it to YouTube and other platforms. But we're live Tuesday and Thursday. Monday and Thursday. I host the Monday sessions, and it's for everybody, producers, artists, managers, everybody. And then the Thursday session is more producer focused, and that's hosted by DJ Payne One. But 1 week notice was also like, okay, I felt like, I can continue to run my Monday sessions and give artists advice, but I really wasn't in the game. So I felt like 1 week notice, I had to be working closer to artists on music, putting out projects to give me a little bit more credibility, because the label, crashed and burned like 5 years ago. So for the past 5 years, I haven't really been working. Outside of giving artists advice here and there, but I really haven't been working directly with artists. So I felt like I needed something, or I would have felt uncomfortable continuing to do the sessions, even though I have enough experience to do it.
Yeah.
I felt a little bit more uncomfortable if I'm not really in the game, like on the ground, like putting projects out. So hopefully 1 week goes well, and I feel more comfortable continuing the MEC stuff.
I think that's incredible. It's amazing how much empathy really can help you speak to someone's needs, like I find it really valuable that you wanted that empathy, that you wanted to be seeing it and feeling it and being a part of it. That's something we value here. All of us who work at Intrapreneur make music, it keeps us in tune with what's going on. And I really think that that's incredibly valuable, which is another reason why I recommend to anyone to go follow Dame, go follow Music Entrepreneur Club. Definitely check out 1 week notice. There's just big moves, great information available. Is there anything else, Dame, that you would like to share with our peeps before we sign off?
No, for the next month, 2 months, I'm all 1 week notice. I'm trying to get it on as many people's radar as possible. I'm trying to make it bigger and better every time we do it. But I also wanted to continue to give opportunities to like the artists that were alumni of the project, right? As the platform builds, hopefully maybe there's a tour that we can do that of all 1 week notice artists that have been part of the project. There's a lot of opportunities,
so
a lot of things I see as the brand grows, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse. And there's a lot of work and a lot of building to do before we, turn it into a show or something like that. But I think it has a lot of
great to have like those things out there though, like I even back in the day, I was talking to Circa and I was like, we should do like Intrapreneur Tours because we all make music. There's very few, I mean, more so now, but there's few of us who would all fit on the same bill in a logical way. So that doesn't totally work. But it's great to have that stuff just like populating in the sky like stars, you know, because you can always just like reach for one and bring it down when you need it. But if there's no stars in the sky, then you got to sit and like think one up, you know? So I think that's very, very cool.
It also just makes it fun, like keeps it fun. Like, you know, the ideas keep coming and it's like, oh man, you know, I could shoot for the stars. You know, I could take this project in any direction that I want. I think that keeps it fun and creative and makes you want to keep doing it, which I hope, you know, it sounds like you're going to keep doing it. I hope you do.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of ideas for it. You know, and same with the MEC, we're always looking for ways to, you know, provide more engaging opportunities. It's hard to keep artists' attention and to get them to learn like what they need to learn to have a successful career in this industry. But we tour the Music Entrepreneur Club, and we host pop-up conferences in various cities across the country. And I look forward to getting back to that once all the COVID restrictions lift. We have contests. I just have a lot of ideas, and I had basically this I'm trying to execute all the different ideas that I had that I didn't get a chance to with the label. But I'm never short of ideas. So hopefully we can keep it going.
That's awesome.
It's the way to be. It's the way to be. Well, thanks again so much, Dame, for joining us. I always love chatting with you. And I think that all of the things you're working on are just a great source of inspiration for everybody. So again, everyone go check out Dame and the Music Entrepreneur Club. 1 week notice. We'll have some links in the show notes so that you can keep up with all of that. But again, thanks a lot, Dame. And I hope you are just, I can't wait to see all of your ideas come to light. So we'll be sure to have you back so you can share the next chapter of all the great stuff you're doing.
Thank you.
Keep your eyes on 1 week notice, indies. And thanks for listening. Thanks for being here, Dave.
Thanks.
Have a great week, everyone. See you next time.